Baruchim haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together in Daf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph, the last 4 lines. The Gemara in the previous Amud discussed that the brachos of shlokos, cooked vegetables, is borei pri ha'adama. The Gemara brought that in the name of Shmuel, in the name of Rav, and also proved that that was also what Rei Yochanan as well said. The Gemara on Daf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph suggested a machloikis tanoim. The 2 students of Bar Kapara were arguing, and they suggested that indeed this is the machlokes between them. However, the Gemara concludes that both Talmidim agree that the bracha of shlokos is shahakol niya bidvoroi, and that's not like any of the amorim we just said before. So the Rishonim say over here that this last Gemara suggesting that it's a machlokes tanoim is not lahalocha. However, what remains lahalacha in that discussion of these Talmidim of Bar Kapara is that when you have one bracha, there's shahakol, and the other food that is a bracha of ha'adama, so the bracha of ha'adama precedes because it's more muvcheres, it's more particular and specific. Also, when it comes to 2 items that have the same bracha, you make a bracha on that which is chaviv. So our Gemara discusses priorities of bracha. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav Chia bar Ashi, pas tsnuma beka'ara, mevarchin aleh hamoitzi. A pas tsnuma, meaning to say that you have dry bread, and he wants to put it inside of a ka'ara to soak the bread a little bit and soften it up because it's hard bread. He says the bracha is hamoitzi. There's no chidish that the bracha is hamoitzi because we learned already on Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis that when you have pieces of bread in a cooked dish, the bracha is hamoitzi, even if the pieces of bread are ultimately less than a kazayis. So the chiddush is not that you make the bracha hamoitzi lechem min haaretz here. The chiddush rather is that even though he had a whole loaf of bread, but he prefers taking the small pieces of that bread and putting it into a soup in order to then soften that bread, the pas tsnuma, and make a bracha on that. Upliga de Rabbi Chia, and this argues on Rabbi Chia, not to be confused with the previous Amora, Rabbi Chia bar Ashi. But Rabbi Chia bar Ashi argues on Rabbi Chia. The Amar Rabbi Chia, tzorich shetichla bracha imapas, because Rabbi Chia holds that when you have that loaf of bread, you need to make a bracha of hamoitzi on the loaf of bread, and then take off, while you're making that bracha, the pieces from that bread, from that loaf. Maski florova, maishnat snuma deloy. What's the reason why you, Rabbi Chia, hold that you don't make a bracha on the snuma, on the pieces of the bread that are in the soup? Mishum dechikalia bracha prusa kakalia. Because when you complete the bracha hamoitzi is going on the pieces of the bread. So he asks, Al hapas nami kika gamro aprusa gamro. According to you, Rabbi Chia, when you're making hamoitzi on the loaf of bread, so you're making the bracha of hamoitzi on the loaf of bread, and as you're finishing the bracha, you're now taking pieces off, which means that ultimately your bracha is going on the pieces themselves. So what did you benefit? What did you gain? That's no different, that's no better than making the bracha of hamoitzi on the piece of the pas tsnuma. Ella, rather, Omar Rava, the procedure should be as follows. Mevarech ve'achar kach boitzeya. You should first take the loaf of bread, then make hamoitzi lechem min haaretz, and only after completing the bracha, if you have other people that are you're going to be moitzi after they say amen, then be boitzeya the lechem. Neherdoi avdi k'Rabbi Chia. In Neherdoi, they did like Rabbi Chia. They used to make the bracha, and then as they're finishing the bracha, they would then take off pieces from the loaf of bread. V'Rabbanan avdei karava, but Rabbanan, they did like Rava, and they waited till you complete the bracha of hamoitzi on the kikar lechem, and then they would take off the pieces. Omar Ravina, Omar li aim, avuch avi k'Rabbi Chia. Your father did like Rabbi Chia. The Omar Rabbi Chia tzar shetichla bracha imapas. Rabbanan avdei karava, but the Rabbanan, they did like Rava, only after he finished the bracha of hamoitzi, then did he take pieces off of that kikar lechem. V'hilchas kirova, the omar mevarech v'achar kach botzeh. And in fact, that's the halacha like Rava, that when a person has a complete loaf of bread, he should first, or a large piece of bread for that matter, he should first make the bracha of hamoitzi, and then take off the pieces only after he completes the entire bracha. Says the Gemara, Itmar, Heviu lifneihem petitim v'shleimin. They brought in front of them large pieces of bread and smaller shleimin, smaller loaves or lachmaniot of small different types of bread that were sholem. Omar Rav Huna mevarech al haptitim upoiter es hashleimin. Rav Huna rules that you make the bracha of hamoitzi on the larger pieces rather than on the lachmaniot, on the small pieces that are small bread that is sholem, the small rolls, and that by making the bracha on the larger pieces, that will poiter these small rolls. Rabbi Yochanan Omar Shleima mitzvah min hamuvchar. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, the shleima, those rolls that are complete, they are better to make a bracha on, and therefore you make a bracha on those, and that will poiter the large pieces. Aval prusa shel chitin v'shleima min hasaorin. However, if you have chitin and you have sa'arin, you have wheat and you have barley, so even if the wheat is a piece, only a small piece of bread, while you have a complete roll which is made out of barley, so the wheat takes precedence because that's the earlier in the pasuk of the Shiva minim, chita and then sa'ara. Rab Yirmiyahu bar Avo kitanoi. Rav Yirmiyahu bar Avo says that which we said before in regards to making a bracha on the petitin, on the large pieces, or on the shleimim, or on the rolls that are complete, that is a machlokes in the Tanoim. Tormin botzal koton sholem, avol chatzi botzal gadol. The Tanna Kama says when you give truma to the kohen, you should give the kohen a complete onion, and not a half of an onion, even if the half of an onion is much bigger. Rabbi Yehuda Omer loy ki el chatzi batzal gadol. Rather, Rabbi Yehuda argues, you give the larger half, then that takes precedence over giving the complete smaller onion. My lab behokem miflegi. The Gemara said, what are they arguing about? Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. The mar sover chashuv adif, umar sover sholim adif. That the Tanna Kama says that sholim is adif, and therefore you make the bracha on you give the truma to the kohen on the complete onion. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says that indeed the bigger piece, which is more chashiv, is adif, and therefore you give that to the kohen. Hey chadika kohen, when the kohen is present and available to give the truma to, then kuliyamo lo pligi de chashiv adif. Then everybody agrees, even the Tanna Kama, the Chachamim, that you would give the bigger piece of onion to the kohen. Ki pligi, when are they arguing? The leka kohen, when there's no kohen available. And therefore, it's a matter of then having to then give him something that ultimately might not remain good, because you don't know when you're going to then come across the kohen to give it to. Disnan, kol makom sheyesh kohen, tar min hayafe. The kol makom she'ein ben hen kohen, tar min hamiskayim. The Tanna Kama says if the kohen is available, you give him the bigger piece. However, the kohen is not available, then you give him what's called mimin hamiskayim, from the part that will then that will remain good, because you don't know when you're going to get that piece to the kohen, and therefore better to give him a complete onion in this case, because that will remain good, even though it's going to be a smaller piece. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, ein tarim ela min hayafa. Even if the coin is not available, Rabbi Yehuda says you always give min hamuvchar, what is the greater sized piece, and therefore you would give that bigger half of onion, even if now the coin is not available, you might have to give it to him only the next day. Omer Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok Rav Nachman says the following: Virei shomayim yoytze yidei shneihim. When it comes to the piece of bread that are large, the petitin, or the rolls that are complete but are smaller, so he says the Yirei Shomayim, what he would do is he put the two together. Umanu, what is this? Who is the one who would do this? Mar Bered Ravina. The Mar Bered Ravina, Maniach Prusa B'toicha Shleimo Ubotzeya. He would hold the complete roll, and underneath it also put together the petitin, the smaller piece. Sorry, the larger piece, but is only a prusa, only a piece, and he would put the two together and then make hamoitzi lechem min haaretz when they are together, uboitzeya, and then he would boitzeya. Tana kamed Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok. This was taught in front of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok. The following: Meniach de prusa b'toich hashleimo ubotzei mevarich. Take the sholem, the lachmaniya, the roll, and then put underneath it the piece that is larger, and then make the bracha moitzi together. Ubotzei mevarich. Omar lei mashmecha. So he asked, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak asked the person who taught this halacha, what's your name? Omar lei Shalman. My name is Shalman. Omar lei Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said the following shevach, the following praise on him. Omar lei, relating to his name, Shalom ato v'shleimo mishnasecha shesamta shalom bein hatalmidim. Your name is Shalman is quite fitting because Shalom ata, you are complete, and also your teaching is complete because you brought shalom, completeness, peace, between two talmidim who are arguing. One that said you should make the bracha on the shalom, the other one said you should make the bracha on the bigger piece, the petitin. Says the Gemara, Marapapa, Hakol Moedim ba Pesach, on Leil HaSeder. Everybody agrees, Shemeniach Prusa b'toich Shleima ubotzeya. That you should take the large piece that is complete, as well as the piece that is broken, we'll call that the Levi, and you would make the bracha together, while holding them together. My taima, lechem oini ksiv, because the matzah is referred to as lechem oini, and therefore it's only a prusa, only a piece. And therefore, when you want to make hamotzi, the procedure is as follows. You take all three matzos, the top one is complete, the bottom one is complete, and the middle one, the levi, which is only a prusa, the lechem oini. Then you put it all together, we're making hamotzi lechem min haaretz. You then drop the bottom matzah, still holding on to the top in the middle, and you make the bracha of achilas matzah, and then you eat from both of those matzos. Omer Rav Ashi, Chazina le Rav Kahana denoki tarti ubotza chada. Here we're going back to bread, and he said that he saw that Rav Kahana would take two loaves, and he would botzeya on one loaf. We'll go back one phrase. Omer Rav Abba ubeshabes chayev adam liptzoya al shtei kikoros. On Shabbos and Huadin, also when it comes to Yontif, a person should be boitzeya on two full lechem, two full loaves. My time, because lechem mishnaksiv. We know that it's a reference to the man. The man fell in the midbar every single day. However, on Erev Shabbos, since it didn't fall on Shabbos, it would fall with a double portion lechem mishnah. And therefore, the halacha is that when a person makes hamoitzi at every su'uda, both on Shabbos as well as on Yantif, he will make the birkas hamoitzi on both loaves, because it says lechem mishnah. Omar Rav Ashi chazina leil Rav Kahana donaki tarti ubotza chada. I saw that Rav Kahana would make hamoitzi on two loaves, but he would only cut into one of them. Rabbi Zera have a botza akula sherusa. Rav Zera, he would cut into one of the loaves in a very large piece. Omar le Ravina le Rav Ashi. Ravina asked Rav Ashi, "V'haka mischazi keravasunusa." But you are appearing to be somebody who is a person who is extra hungry. It's not derech eretz to have such a large piece in front of you. Omar le kivin de kol yoyim eloi ka'avid hochi. Since this is not the regular way that I cut in such a large piece, v'ha'ina ki'ovid Lo mischazi kiravas anusa. But since I do it only today and not on the other days because of kavod Shabbos or kavod Yom Tov, it shows that there's a chavivus for the Suda Shabbos or the Suda Yom Tov, and therefore there's not a chashas that it will be considered to be chaser derech eretz. Says the Gemara, Rav Ami Rav Asi, ki hava misrami le rifta de'uva mevarchin alaya motzi lechem min haaretz. When they would have their loaves of bread from the erev that they would make, they would use those loaves of bread and make hamotzi lechem min haaretz from those loaves. Amr, they said, Hoyovis abi be mitzvah chado, navi be mitzvah achriti. Once we already used it for one mitzvah of an eruv, let us also use it for another mitzvah of lechem mishnah. And therefore, when a person, for example, makes eruv tavshilin, when Yontif comes out to be on Erev Shabbos, so then he takes the loaf and he uses that loaf usually also with a beitzah, with an egg, and he makes an Erev Tavshilin with the cooked beitzah and also the baked bread, which allows him to cook and also to bake on that Erev Shabbos, which is Yom Tif. And therefore, so he used this now for the Eruv, so there's a mitzvah to use it for Lechem Mishnah, and therefore ideally then to use it for his Suda Shabbos, and then be able to then make Hamoitzi on the Lechem Mishnah that was already for the Eruvin. As it says over here, Kiva Hoyovis Avi Be Mitzvah Chada, since I used it for one mitzvah, Na'avi Be Mitzvah Achriti.